welcome everyone to the September 20, 2023 Board of Directors meeting of the Tahoe Truckee Sanitation Agency. If everyone could join Dale in leading us to the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. And let the record reflect that all 5 board members are present in person. And the next item on our agenda is public comment. This is an opportunity for any member of the audience to make any comments to the board of directors for up to 5 minutes for any items not on the agenda. And just a reminder that that would be for comment only. We as a board wouldn't be able to talk about any items that are brought up under public comment. So with that, is there anyone who would like to make public comment? Hi.
Hi.
If you could stand at the podium, that'd be great.
So my name is Angelina Henson. I'm a prior employee at TTSA. I just want to first start off by saying I love my job. I loved everybody I worked with. I loved my supervisor, but I felt like I was pushed out. And I just wanted to provide a little information to you guys from the employee survey that I provided. And I'm just going to kind of read over it real quick. One of the things was suggestions and improvements, and I would suggest that a good manager should be able to have the skills and knowledge to lead a team and be able to communicate effectively. I really think that time management is lacking along with accountability and responsibility from Crystal. It would have been nice to have a manager that was available and supportive during the normal business hours. Sorry, I'm kind of emotional. I think there could have been improvement in the manager to staff communication. Staff are always left out, and managers don't allow us to speak staff to staff. This prevented me to perform my work duties to my best abilities. Crystal was very secretive towards her staff. Crystal would tell each one of us not to tell anyone when it was not necessary, which left us all baffled and confused on a weekly basis. Even with my last few days, it was secret on who I was going to be training to do my job. I was not involved in any of the discussions pertaining to my duties and who would do them. Crystal acted like I didn't exist after resigning. Why did I resign? My manager and how she had flipped our department upside down. We were not allowed to help each other. Prior to Crystal, the accounting department got the work done without constant meetings and confusion. Crystal would lie and blame her decision-making on Richard instead of taking ownership of her decisions, such as not purchasing laptops to work from home. Crystal would only allow a portion of her staff to work from home and tell them not to tell the others because she knew it was unethical. Managers need to be held to the same accountability as staff, if not more. Be on time and be able to do the job without taking credit for the work from staff. I always got my work done, but Crystal made it difficult with her unnecessary urgent projects and deadlines because she was constantly coming in late or not at all. My department was always told to work late and not to take time off during audit, but she would leave for vacation. She always had urgent needs because she had zero time management and was never here to get her work done. So it fell on us as a department, which was really hard for the last 2 years. I hope in the future TTSA learns how to make this place enjoyable and pleasant. At the moment, I don't see the change needed to be happy or sustainable to work here, so I plan to find it elsewhere, unfortunately. I really wanted to retire from here and continue working with my coworkers, but I can no longer work in these conditions. Crystal has lied to admin staff saying that I am unwilling to train them, but I have been nothing but ready to train anyone that is willing. I received the cold shoulder from Crystal and silent treatment my last week at TTSA, which was heartbreaking considering how hard I have worked at TTSA. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Hey, Mike.
President William. Good morning, members of the board. My name is Mike Smith, safety officer. I recently received a letter from Anthem Blue Cross regarding coverage for health care, and just wanted to kind of, get some information out as it relates to it and possible consequences in the future. So I'm just going to read this letter. And it's kind of wordy. I apologize in advance. Long sentences. I tried to put a lot of information on one page. So I just want to say in advance that I got permission from Richard Palante to share the following medical information of his. So Richard and I were both diagnosed with the same type of rare cancer that apparently started at the same time while working at TTSA. Richard discovered his condition due to symptoms he was experiencing. I discovered it through a routine health checkup about 2 years after Richard's initial diagnosis. The level of care Richard experienced at Sanford versus Reno was night and day. Sanford is on the cutting edge of research and development for treating this type of cancer. The medical facility in Reno that Richard started with initially misdiagnosed a tumor as a blood clot and prescribed blood thinners that threatened to cause a fatal venous rupture. And the prognosis the doctors gave Richard at Reno Medical Center was very bleak. They told him that they can do nothing for him but try to manage the symptoms and allow him to succumb to the cancer, which would have killed him in just a few years. For me, the surgical protocols and imaging for this type of cancer that the Reno Medical Center provides would have missed the areas that metastasized into my lymphatic system, which would have caused the cancer to spread all over. Having the option of going to Stanford for treatment was and may still be a matter of life and death for both Richard and me. Previous to the cancer diagnoses, I had a spinal surgery at Stanford Medical Center and had PERS Gold, and then I switched to Platinum afterward, having experienced the high medical costs and having to cover 20% versus 10%. So, and then I got diagnosed with the cancer, and so it worked out, I guess you could say. And so Richard was already going there, so I knew where to go. He told me that he had researched, him and his wife had researched the best places to go for this type of cancer in the country, and Stanford was number one. So I went there and started treatment as well. And then a couple days ago, I got a letter from Anthem that says, "Dear Anthem member, this letter is to inform you that Stanford Medical Center, Stanford Healthcare, Tri-Valley, and Lucille Packard Children's Hospital will no longer be a participating provider in your PERS Gold PPO plan, effective 2024, January 1st. So that's what spurred me to communicate these details to everybody. So Richard and I will no longer be covered for continuing cancer treatment if the option of choosing PERS Platinum is taken away from TTSA employees. If I or Richard have to pay for continuing treatment at Stanford at 100% out of pocket, which isn't possible due to the cost of healthcare, or we have to go elsewhere for treatment at a medical facility that accepts PERS Gold and very likely lacks expertise to effectively treat this type of cancer, which could end in catastrophic results. In this scenario, how could the plan to move everybody into PERS Gold with the agency contribution of 10% of additional patient responsibility achieve being made whole? Just wanted to, I know that was discussed, all the details of being made whole, but here's a situation where it wouldn't be possible. I know the scenario was previously brought up in another board meeting, and just wanted to give a real life example. So TTSA employees currently have these medical benefits and have greatly benefited from them. I don't think it'd be prudent moving forward with a plan to take away the PERS Platinum coverage, speaking personally, and the shared monetary benefit that's currently split between the agency and the employees that switch to PERS Gold. I respectfully request, echoing the same message and sentiment from previous board meetings, that the medical benefits remain as they currently are. Also, if this is brought up as an issue to be evaluated again in the compensation and classification study, the letter I got from Anthem regarding PERS Gold no longer being accepted. our SIP Platinum no longer being accepted should be taken into consideration when explaining how removing PERS Platinum and only operating PERS Gold with the additional 10% coverage provided by the AC can be equivalent to our current coverage. So, yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Mike, can I ask a question? Sure. So that's a letter that you just received as an individual who has used the Stanford facility, and it sounds like there was a change that happened in the preferred provider network with PERS Gold, where previously Stanford was included as a preferred provider under the PERS Gold program, but now something changed in that world, so that's no longer going to be the case. But they would remain a preferred provider in the PERS Platinum program, is your understanding?
Yeah, that's exactly what
Okay.
happened. And I got the letter because I did have gold when I had back surgery there. And then I switched to platinum, and I asked Richard if he got the letter, and he didn't. So
Got it.
that's why I got it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any additional public comment? Okay. Seeing none. And thank you both, thank you for feeling comfortable in bringing that information to our attention. That's very helpful, at least for me. So, yeah. Professional achievements, awards, and anniversaries.
Good morning, President Wilkins and directors. I'm Katie Frono, Human Resources Administrator. As I do on a monthly basis, I would like to congratulate some employees for their achievements and promotions. First one would be Kaylee Oley. She transferred from being the purchasing agent to being the new accounting technician in the accounting department, so congratulations, Kaylee. And additionally, I would like to congratulate Ryan Schultz, who was promoted to the electrical and instrumentation supervisor. And I do believe Paul Schaus would like to make a statement.
Well, I just wanted to welcome Ryan to the department. He's obviously been here for quite some time. He started with the agency back in 2016 as an E&I Tech 1. Since that time, he's advanced to Tech 3 and has received his grade 4 E&I certification. He comes to us from Perry Tech as a graduate of Perry Tech and previous work with Tesco, which sometimes we use on site as one of our contractors, coincidentally. But his appointment was made effective on August 7th, and we're certainly glad to have him as an E&I supervisor. So he's going to do a great job for us.
So congratulations to both. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Next is our consent agenda. Is there any member of the board who would like any item removed from consent for discussion? Seeing none, is there any member of staff who would like an item removed?
No.
Anyone like to make a motion?
I'll move. Second.
Motion by Blake, second by Dale to approve the consent calendar. Is there any member of the audience who would like to remove an item? Seeing none. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Unanimous. Okay. Next on the agenda is appointment of agency board president and vice president. I will share that I had a conversation with Dave Smeltzer about this, but none of the other board members. My understanding is Dave would be willing
I'd like to make a motion that we skip me as going into normal rotation. I just find it really hard to stay on task and run a meeting as well. I've had 2 experiences with that. One just last Monday. And I think Scott would do better than I would. I just would have trouble focusing. You know, I'm 5 months older than our president, so I figured it. Anyway, so that's my recommendation is we move Scott up and leave me out, just because I would rather focus on the issues than try and run a meeting.
So to be clear, you're suggesting that if Scott's interested in being board vice president,
Yes.
that you would be interested in not being board vice president.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. So I mean, I think the tradition at TTSA for a long time was that the board president and vice president was selected, and they stayed in those roles for quite some period of time. I think more recently we've kind of rotated those roles. Lane was the board president for a period of time, and Dale was. And then I had the good fortune of being able to be in that role. So, I mean, I think if we continued that tradition, it would be Blake being nominated for board president, and then potentially Scott for board vice president.
So moved. Works for me.
Moved by Director Cox.
Is that okay, Blake? We didn't ask Scott. Are you okay with that?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, so moved by Director Cox, seconded by Director Smeltzer to appoint Blake Trezin as TTSA Board President. I believe that's typically for a 2-year period.
That is
Yes.
And to appoint Director Wilson as TTSA Board Vice President for that same 2-year period. And then would that take effect today, like right now, or at our next meeting?
The next meeting.
Next meeting, okay. Okay, so we've got a motion and a second. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed? All right, congratulations, gentlemen.
Thanks, Dan. Good job for the last 2 years.
Yeah, thank you.
Got another peaceful transfer of power here at the TTSA Board of Directors.
Hasn't got to Congress yet.
I like it.
See what happens on January 6th.
Okay, next, approval of classification and compensation study based on review of proposals.
Excuse me?
All right. Who's taking the lead on this item?
Vicki will give the presentation.
Vicki, okay.
And we just updated, actually Richard emailed you the update for section 4 for
Thank you.
Dan, Blake, and Scott.
Okay, so we've got an updated board packet that was just sent to us that has the updated section 4 in it?
Correct.
Okay.
And we have the update on the screen for you also.
Okay.
For those in the audience, section 4 is on the screen for the update.
Dan, which email address are you using?
The TTSA.
Okay. Give me 1 second. Thank
It's also on the screen.
You can go ahead. Yeah, you can wait.
Okay, good morning again, President Wilkins, and new president to be soon, Treeson. At the August 2023 board meeting, we received an approval for the issuance of a request for proposal, or an RFP, for a classification and compensation study. The RFP was posted after the last board meeting with a closing date of September 1st, 2023. 2 proposals were received, which included MGT of America Consulting and Koff and Associates. Each proposal was reviewed carefully for completeness, determining that they met the needs and requirements of TTSA. The general manager and I met yesterday with the employee observation group, and their feedback included some of the following. Koff's proposal seemed more tailored to TTSA, where MGT's proposal felt or seemed as though it was a one-size-fits-all and not tailored to TTSA. The finding good comparables is most important to the group and to the employees. The group represents the employees. Koff seemed more oriented toward wastewater, utility, and or public works, where MGT seemed more oriented toward education. And Koff and Associates specifically stated that it considered the local market. So based on the review of the proposals and feedback provided from the employee observation group, we would like to recommend securing the services of Koff and Associates based on their extensive experience with California agencies and specifically wastewater. Also, their good reviews from local agencies, their current experience with local agencies, including some of the agencies that you represent, up to 12 comparable agencies as opposed to 8 with the other group, And while it costs a little bit more, the comparable agencies are extremely important to staff and have been, I would say, the biggest discussion point among staff and among the observation group. So management and staff recommend the approval of the request for proposal for Koff and Associates.
All right, thank you. And COP is the company we used last time?
No,
They're
we
the
used
one
Bryce.
we used 2 times ago. What's that?
Yes.
That was, what was the name of that company?
Bryce.
Bryce, that's right. Okay. And I'll say that the town of Truckee, who I work for, this is where I got confused. We had used Bryce a couple times ago, and we just used COP recently
Correct.
as well.
Yes.
Okay, so recommendation is that we hire Koff and Associates to perform the class and comp study on behalf of the agency.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Any questions or comments from the board?
I got a question. Once again, Vicki, when was the last time we did this class and comp study?
We embarked on it in late 2018, and it all became effective January of 2020.
Okay, so this is going to be a class and comp study that is on top of what we already went through to update the class and comp?
It will be a new study with limited classification and total compensation. So it would be a brand new study, but we would utilize the information received from the last study to provide to the new consultant.
Now, the reason that we're doing this study is because we've outgrown the last study, or things have changed within the organization that would prompt a new study?
I would say those are fair statements, yes.
Okay.
Other, Blake?
Yeah, good observations by your group. I saw the same things, that the COF group seemed to be much more oriented towards our type of organization. The one other thing I saw was that COF doesn't plan on coming up. Everything's supposed to be virtual, and so long as we've got good Zoom meeting setups to dialogue with them, that should be okay. I saw the other one had 3 meetings they planned to come up, but I think in this day and age that doesn't seem like that's worth making a switch. Can you, Vicki, explain again the limited classification? Classifications. What are we doing? What are those? In a broad stroke, why are we going back to the classification? I understand the impetus for the kind of compensation and benefits and all that stuff, but what is going on with the classification side that we're needing to hire a consultant for that portion?
Okay, yes. So over time, since January of 2020, when the new job descriptions went into effect, we've made changes along the way. Could have been little changes, could have been bigger changes. I will cite one of them specifically, which was the E&I supervisor, for example, where we had added a lot of duties for the IT portion, job duties. Those are now being taken out of, so they were put in, now they're being taken out of that job description. We're redistributing those duties among other staff. We've created a couple of new positions, which you'll see here in the next few items. Namely, we're creating a technical services manager. We're creating an information technician or information technology supervisor. We would like to have them look at some of the positions, again, being limited, so we're having them just look at certain positions that seem to have either evolved through time or we've actually changed through time. Do you have anything else to add to that, Richard?
Yeah, and I think the list is 12 out of the total that we have. Some of it, again, has been a shift of duties and leveraging certain skill sets to pick up some of the duties, such as compliance side of things, and then with Jay's departure, just some shifts that have taken place to get a fresh look at certain ones and do they fit. And additionally, look at all of those that were Y rated through the last study to make sure that's still a legitimate effect from the last one, or we need to relook at that. So.
And yeah, it's interesting. So we're hiring the consultant to do classification, but we have subsequent actions where we're adopting these new positions, and then on the tail of that, then we're going to send it out to the consultant to kind of confirm that what we and all the classification stuff that we're looking at, and a new salary schedule. That's all been done in-house, right?
Correct. And it's a little bit of a status quo approach with those two new positions as far as salary ranges. And then, we did the in-house job description as far as scope of duties. I don't think that when we go through the classification, that will change much. It's really going to be looking at, okay, we've identified a position to do these duties. What's the appropriate pay scale?
Okay. And so it's just those 12 positions that do the survey. I forget the name of the acronym they use for their
PIQ,
Yeah,
or PDQ,
okay.
yeah. Position, description, questionnaire. Yes.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? I have one minor one that would have to do with the details of the work scope. And this may not be appropriate for this meeting, it may be subsequent, but I think historically what we have done, or I should say historically, we've done one class and comp study here at TTSA. I think at the time we did that, we got the salary survey completed for the comparable agencies, and then we elected as a board to set our salary scale at the 75th percentile. So as I understand that, if we had, let's say, a dozen survey group, other agencies that we surveyed, and we looked at the pay scale for a treatment plant operator, we would kind of rank those, and each agency has whatever their pay scale is, and I think what we did is set our compensation to be at the kind of top 25% of what that overall average was. And so I think that was good. I think for me it would be helpful to know what that point is, but also to know what the 50th percentile is. So as an agency deciding how, where do we want to be on the pay scale? Do we want to be the absolute top paying agency? Do we want to be the bottom paying agency? Do we want to be somewhere in between? Having that data bracketed and available to us to look at, I think, is helpful so that we understand what the relative cost implications are from one point to another. We recently did that at the Tahoe City PUD. I was surprised at the relative. I thought there was going to be a bigger gap between the 50th percentile and 75th percentile, but it was only a few percent, which surprised me. So anyway,
It can really vary between positions and how. It's not
right.
Well, we have to be in the upper tier of everything just for the cost of living up there.
Probably.
One of my sons just.
Some of it depends
went through all that.
on some of it depends on comparable agencies too, right?
But it would have to be somebody local practically to compare.
Right.
It's just nuts up here.
Yeah, all that stuff comes into consideration. So anyway, that's just a request that we also get that data as a part of the final work product.
Okay. And I did want to add to, like you mentioned, the remote meetings. We did intend to work to negotiate with them for when it comes to working with the board to set the comparables, that we do that in person instead of trying to do that via Zoom.
okay.
Okay.
I read the approaches portion of that. That was important to me. And again, I thought COF was much more detailed, but some of the, I'd say, sticking points in the last one had to do with the utilization of the classics benefit for all employees when you still have this mix of classic and pepper employees, and how that negatively impacted them, and they didn't really address that. And so I'll be curious. That still remains a sort of issue that we have here with both Pepper and Classic employees, and that'll be something, I'd be interested to see you flesh that out with them early on as to how they are now dealing with that, so that we don't get too far down the road before that. And then another question, and I forget, and I think staff's really going to work with them, and then we'll get reports periodically. The question again that kind of came up when we talked about adjusting some of our health benefits, or for any benefit, this kind of thing where you use total compensation to define salary, and then when the board or the agency decides to adjust a benefit, is it appropriate for this salary to go up that equal amount? How does a consultant, give us guidance on how to address that? If the agency is hopefully providing the same benefit for a cost, lesser cost, how does that, is there really supposed to be an adjustment in salary to adjust that, so that we still can try and be an efficient agency, but that way. So anyway, those are a couple of things I would think you'd want to have discussions with, that the group would want to talk to them about early on.
Yes, and we, when Richard and I were speaking with the group yesterday, that was definitely a discussion that we had, that is all on the table, and that it will be revisited in the near future.
Okay.
But we'll be sure to communicate that to the consultant.
Okay. Other questions or comments?
No.
Okay. So do you need a motion?
We do.
Would anyone care to make that motion?
I'll move to recommend, or move that we authorize the general manager to execute a contract with Koff and Associates for a limited class and compensation study.
Second. A second.
All right. Thanks. Motion second. Is there any public comment on this item before we take action? Yeah. Should have asked for that earlier. I apologize.
That's all right.
Yeah.
I just wanted to quickly address the board. I've been part of these class and comp studies before, and would like to let the board know that Richard's been very transparent with us. Vicky's been great trying to work with us, and I hope we get to keep doing this together. I've been on other meetings where it's very quiet and secretive.
Mhm.
So just want to let you guys know that these guys have been great so far.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. There's no more public comment. Just one other question. The total dollar amount we're looking at?
5910.
Yeah.
52,910.
52,910. Okay. All right. So,
If I may.
yeah.
So on the K&A, the implementation would be 6 months from the acceptance of it? Is that how, or when we accept to do it with them, recommendation, implementation would be 6 months down the road, is that correct?
That is, yes, that is what their timeline states. They did state in their proposal, Koff did, that they would request, as long as we're willing, that we would start the process in January, and that we would have a completion by the end of June.
Right.
We do hope to be able to implement by the beginning of the fiscal year, which is July 1st approximately. That's at least our target.
Okay, thank you.
And just to add a little bit more, we would anticipate likely working with them and providing them with whatever initial information they wanted ahead of time prior to that January start date.
Okay, great.
Okay. We've got a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Thanks. Okay, next on the agenda is consideration of approving a step increase to the general manager's salary. So we had a staff report from Andrew Ramos in our package. Any further comments, Andrew?
No further comments. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board? Again, the recommendation would be that we move Richard to a step 4 in the agency's salary schedule.
Yeah, and that's just to be clarified, that was consistent with the contract agreement that we signed with Richard when he stepped up to the general manager position. Yep.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Director Cox, second by Director Smeltzer. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Wait a
Aye.
minute,
Oh,
wait a minute. I just got a comment.
Yep.
Richard, I want to thank you for what you've brought to this agency over the last few months. It's been a real positive step for all of us, and I want to thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Richard. Keep up the good work.
Vote.
Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? None opposed. Okay, next, approval of updated and new classification descriptions. Vicki?
Thank you, and good morning again. So, this is a lot, so thank you for looking at all of it. New classification descriptions became effective in January of 2020, like we just talked about. As a continuous effort to maintain the accuracy of the classification descriptions and due to a recent retirement, there are proposed amendments to the existing job descriptions as well as a few proposed new classification descriptions. I would like to mention, because we provided you with an additional packet, that the classification descriptions in the board packet did not reflect the track changes, and as a result, the additional packet we gave you have the track changes. Additionally, there is one change on the staff report, and that is related to the senior engineer position, and that changes to remove or disregard the third sentence that states change to non-exempt and have reviewed during the class and comp process. We determined we will leave that position as exempt as of now. It'll still be reviewed in the class and comp process, but we don't expect that to change. And last, the laboratory director will report to the newly proposed technical services department manager, and that is reflected in the track changes that you will see. So a few highlights of the job descriptions included in your packet. The engineering manager is proposed to be removed, and the technical services manager will replace it. This position will oversee engineering and the laboratory. The former engineering manager position oversaw the safety officer, which will now be supervised by the general manager. There's a proposed addition of the information technology supervisor, which I mentioned earlier. This is a completely new position. And going back probably several years, 2 or 3 years ago, there was a retirement of a department manager, an IT department manager, and rather than rehire that position, we absorbed those duties into the maintenance position that we talked about earlier also. As a result of the IT position, the proposed IT position, there will be a general restructuring within the maintenance department. Several job descriptions in this packet are being amended within that department, generally just due to that reporting structure. All manager positions have language added that they may serve as the acting general manager, and the laboratory positions are being amended due to the new reporting structure also. So management and staff recommend the approval of the new and updated classification descriptions with the changes mentioned a little bit earlier. So any questions?
Thanks, Vicki. I'll jump in, sorry for moving forward, but there's a little bit of reorganization that's going on kind of within the subtext of the classification, or the position classification updates.
Correct.
And I just don't want that to go unnoticed. So
Can we bring up the org chart? You know, that's a separate item, but it's clearly related once we adopt this.
Absolutely.
So adopting the org chart is sort of, and so maybe you can zoom out a little bit and Vicki could point out the sort of on the org chart,
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know, do you want to walk over to the screen?
Sure. So generally speaking, what we have going on here, I don't know if it's better to be out here or over here. So we have the Technical Services Department, formerly called the Engineering Department. Under engineering, we previously had all the engineers and the safety officer. So now we will have all the engineers and the laboratory instead. So laboratory was formerly under the operations department, which oversaw all the operators as well as the laboratory. So again, lab is moving over here. Again, safety officer was formerly under the engineering department, which is now up here under the general manager. Let's see, under the maintenance department, we have a new proposed position of the IT supervisor. And as I just mentioned a couple of years ago with the retirement of the IT department manager, we chose to not hire a new manager and instead all of the IT operations were absorbed into the maintenance department at the time. They were given to the E&I supervisor back then, but now they're being taken out and a new supervisor is being proposed. Let's see. There is one additional position that's being proposed here in the finance and admin department, which is the administrative assistant. That job description did not make it into the packet, so you'll see that in the future at some point. But generally speaking, those are the changes.
And the administrative assistant and the IT position were part of the budget process this year. We did bump up the position in IT from a tech to a supervisor as we've gone through. Well, backing up when it got put under Paul. Paul was uniquely qualified to be able to absorb that, and it was still a very big stretch just in the workload. With Paul's promotion and then having a new E&I supervisor come in, finding someone that has the E&I side as well as the IT and SCADA side it's extremely tough. So we decided to bump that position from a tech to a supervisor. In addition, we have all the work that's coming out of the IT master plan that's going to be coming in the next couple of years. So those three individuals are going to be pretty well taxed with all the SCADA upgrades coming. So just a workload adjustment is why we bumped it to a supervisor level.
So if we adopt the job descriptions and, by correlation, the org chart, what is the net effect in terms of the total FTEs, full-time employees from our existing org chart?
Two additional FTEs, the IT supervisor and the admin assistant, or I think that's what we're calling it.
Okay.
All the others were already budgeted FTEs.
And then have you done a cost implication, so to supervisor level and an admin assistant?
The budget had the admin assistant at that cost level. Obviously we estimated it because we're going to need to see what that actual is. We haven't done a cost estimate to see what the delta is between the tech and the supervisor.
But
there's a cost savings.
Right.
Jay's whole position, the engineering manager, was at a higher salary level than what the technical services manager position is. And it kind of goes back to what I mentioned, kind of status quo. We made its pay range the same as the operations manager and the maintenance manager, and then we let it flush out if there's any changes needed in the class and comp.
And then just, I guess one regarding the technical services manager position. I mean, we all know now that we have the master plan, we've got tens of millions of dollars of capital plan, projects planned in the next 5 years, and just making sure you're comfortable that, and typically that capital plan would have been under the engineering manager, that this technical services manager, we've brought the salary down a little bit. we're asking for engineering desirable, just, I guess, wanting to emphasize that we make sure we hire somebody who can really oversee this massive, I'm calling it massive, capital plan that's going to be go through in terms of the design and construction management and all that we're, not, it seems like that job is going to be busier in the next 5 years than it's potentially been even previously.
Correct, and we are keeping that in mind, being very mindful of that. One thing we're looking at within the engineering is we've typically only had one senior engineer in the group with the amount of projects that is showing to be a little bit of a bottleneck. So one thing we're proposing as well is to make the engineering series the same as we do with all of our other series. Is once you qualify, if you have the experience, you qualify for the position, and upon the manager's recommendation that you can move up in that role. Mm-hmm. So I would anticipate that while we're kind of losing that engineering manager, we're going to gain another senior engineer. So that's my approach to help with that management of all of the upcoming CIP work. But again, it still will be the right person who can manage it.
Yep. Other questions, comments, thoughts? If we could flip back to on the screen. I know I pulled us ahead to item 6, but wanted to make sure that we were, or at least that I was understanding, by doing the new job classifications, we were kind of approving or setting up for the approval on the org chart modifications. Want to make sure we all understood that. So the recommendation is that we as the board approve the updated position descriptions that were, there was a couple different versions that were floating around. The most current version that was given to us today is what we would be approving.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
I move to approve as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second. Did further comments?
Yeah, you got a question.
Yeah, just one more question. I mean, it's great hearing Richard again. You being transparent with staff. I forget your name. Jeff. Specifically around the comp study, but I'm just assuming this is a big thing. Changing the org chart, changing job description, salary schedule. That the similar level of communication. This is not. There's been outreach to staff, and they'd be here. They all left at the end of the comp study, and so that's a reflection that there's. I assume that there's buy-in.
I did email staff and met with staff. I didn't meet with all staff. I met with the staff that it affected, but I emailed all staff with the proposed changes so that if anyone had any questions, they could catch me when I was out and about and ask. And there were a few questions about stuff.
Great. And I didn't ask for public comment, so I should do that. No public comment. We've got a motion and a second. Is there any further dialogue from the board on this topic? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Okay, so now the next item is item D5, which is approval of the updated salary schedule. Ms. Vicki?
Yes.
Thanks.
Again, on a regular basis, the salary schedule is updated, and due to a recent retirement and the resulting restructuring of staff, as well as other newly created positions being proposed through the budgeting process, the salary schedule is being updated. All changes have been updated into the salary schedule that is before you today. I would like to give credit to Dawn and Michelle in accounting for making the recent updates to the salary schedule, as it did require a lot of amendments, as you pointed out, and they were able to fit this into their already busy and overloaded work schedules. We have already discussed in a previous agenda item many of the changes that you will see reflected here in the salary schedule. So management and staff would recommend the approval of the updated salary schedule.
Thanks, Vicki. Blake?
Just in the future, it'd be great to get a red line strikeout on this. I mean, it's hard to look at this and know what was changed and what wasn't. It definitely doesn't stand out. Okay. Obviously, the brand new positions I looked at those, but I didn't know whether there was any of the existing titled positions, because maybe the job description changed, that there was a change. I did a quick survey and didn't really see it, but were there any changes in existing titles, any changes in the salary, or is it just incorporating the new position of the, I guess, the admin assistant, IT supervisor, and technical services manager? Those are added. Those have, you guys had to kind of pick a spot to put those in at, but all the other ones that are still the same titles, no changes?
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm
And then,
that.
of course, the department names were, at least the technical services department was changed, yes. But that is correct.
Okay, and then we've got the A and the B on here. The A, that represents the salary positions that are still frozen while they come into alignment with our last salary survey?
Correct.
Okay. And then there's fewer of those every time
Yes.
you do one of these updates because
Absolutely.
more positions kind of come into alignment, and with any luck, the rest of these will go away with our next salary survey, but we'll find out. Okay. Okay, is there any public comment on this item? All right, seeing none. Would anyone care to make a motion to approve the updated salary schedule as presented?
I'll move.
Second.
Motion by Director Trezin, second by Director Wilson. If there's no further discussion, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None opposed? Okay, next on the agenda is approval of the agency organizational chart. We just had a presentation from Vicki on that. Is there any further questions from the board beyond what Vicki clarified for us a few minutes ago? Seeing none, is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, would anyone like to make a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Director Cox, second by Director
I'll second.
Wilson to approve the updated org chart.
Can I just-
Blake?
I'm just looking, the new administrative assistant 1-2, it doesn't, am I missing it? I don't see it on the salary schedule. And I know there's no incumbent in that position currently, but
Yeah,
I assume you'll be recruiting for that. Or are we going to wait till, go ahead.
We ran out of time in getting the job description written for the
Okay.
for the administrative assistant, and then of
Okay.
course the based on the duties of the job description, that's how the salary is set. So we were unable to get that information on.
So that'll be something you come back next month,
in the
Yeah,
future.
right.
likely, if
Next
you're
month
actually
or
trying to
two.
recruit it
Yes.
in the near term. Okay.
Good
Thank you.
catch. I don't know, someone's paying attention up here. Yeah.
Last second.
Yeah.
If I could just make one additional comment, and that is just to give credit to Scott in engineering for making these recent updates on this organizational chart. He was very persistent and in a good way, and did this in AutoCAD as I was not able to find the time to do it myself. So I just wanted to give a plug to him. Really appreciate his help.
Great. Great. Okay, so let's see, we've had a motion and a second. We've taken public comment, of which there was none. Any further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, updated org chart. Okay, next is approval of ordinance 3-2023, which would repeal ordinance 3-2015.
So at the August board meeting, we brought forth this ordinance to repeal the original purchasing ordinance as we drafted a new resolution, which is next on the agenda. So this is the final action to actually repeal the existing purchasing ordinance.
Okay. Any further discussion on this from the board? Seeing none, there's no public comment. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Also move.
Did you get that?
Motion
Okay.
by Director Cox, second by Director Wilson.
that work?
It works.
Okay.
Exactly.
You guys all good with that?
Yep.
Okay. That's what I'm already hearing, so I was just sort of ignoring it. Okay. Motion by Director Cox, second by Director Wilson to approve Ordinance 3-2023. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Next is approval of purchasing policy resolution number 14-2023.
So there's based on some feedback, I did make a modification to this from what you saw in August. And the only modification is it's blue line, not red line, is going from 25 to 50,000, and discussing with staff with what we're seeing in pricing with everything, it was felt like if we went to the 50,000, we wouldn't be revisiting this as soon. So made that change, bringing it to the board for discussion, and then ultimately approval, whether it be at the original 25,000 that I brought last month, or if the board would so approve the 50,000, that would be the new limit assessed in the resolution.
And that applies to what type of purchase?
It's generally all open market purchases.
Okay.
Anything. So at the $50,000 mark, we'd bring it to the board for approval. Obviously, we have finance committees, so the finance committee is going to see these purchases coming through in a more real time. As far as public works contracts, we still have to go to bid, but it would still be, it would give us the leniency to go to bid, do the project if it was under 50, but if it was over 50, we would bring it to the board for approval.
Right. It basically just provides a little more authority for staff to make things happen without getting slowed down by board approvals.
Correct.
In your previous draft, it was 25.
Correct.
Our existing limit is
15.
15. So we're really moving from 15 to 50.
Correct.
Anything that you spend more than 15K on currently ends up on our board agenda. You can't actually buy it till you get our approval,
That's
authorization, and now we go up to 50.
Correct.
Yeah, and you'd given us a kind of a draft of this last time. I think we were in agreement with it. I think there was some indication at that meeting that, at least I know I had said that I would be comfortable with even a higher level on this number. Sounds like staff took that and ran with it. Right.
Yes, we did.
So,
Richard, so if we approve the 50, internally, how does that work? That we're giving you the authority to go up to 50. What about your managers, or they don't have the 50,000? Anything that's purchased, there's a certain level at which they have the authority to go out and buy things. And what is that set at?
It's going to be set at 5,000.
5,000. Above 5,000, it needs yours up to 50. Above 50, it goes to the board.
Correct.
okay, thanks. Any further discussion? No public comment on this item? If the board members are okay with it, would anyone like to make a motion?
Also,
Motion by Director Smeltzer, second by Director Wilson.
I'll second.
And there's no further discussion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Just a follow-up comment on this. At our Tahoe City PUD board meeting last week, the staff brought us a recommendation it affects levels on public works contracting and when you can direct hire contractors. I don't know if it applies to TTSA or not. Andrew's probably familiar with it. It's this California Uniform Public Cost Accounting Act, or
CAPCA.
CAPCA, exactly. It's basically the state legislature provided an opportunity to do a little more internal cost tracking, and in exchange be able to get more flexibility in the public bidding process. So I don't know if that's something that staff's interested in looking at or not. But
It is. Andrew had shared that with me as we were working on this. It's our next step is to look into that and
Okay.
What we need to do. And
I'm not saying we need to do it one way or the other because we did it in Tahoe City. I just wanted to bring it up. And it basically,
what's the advantage?
so what it Right now, anytime we hire a contractor, we have to go through a public bidding process. Anytime the dollar amount is above a pretty low level, I can't.
$5,000.
It's the lowest threshold of any of my clients, and it's set by state statute, and it's $5,000 bucks gets you nothing.
Right. So we want to hire a contractor to spruce up our landscaping or whatever. We got to put together plans and specs and bid documents, and it just a lot of administrative overhead. This other approach allows us to go out and direct hire contractors for up to like $60,000 or something, and then do a less formal bidding process to hire contractors between like a $60,000 and a $200,000 threshold, and those thresholds constantly increase as inflation increases. So my assessment of it is that it gives us an opportunity to hire contractors for small projects with a lot less red tape. So,
Streamline.
yeah, I mean is that a fair assessment, Andrew?
It is. It's very useful for agencies to do a lot of small projects, especially ones with abnormally low bid thresholds like TTSA. So it's something that Richard and I have been talking about. It's likely that you'll see a proposal on it at some point.
Okay.
To put it in real world, like the concrete slab we're doing for the new sodium hypochlorite tanks, half in the bid. If we were under that model, we would have been able to just go with the pre-selected contractor.
Right. Where you can bring a contractor in, talk with the contractor who probably knows as much as the engineer might in terms of what that slab needs to be, and kind of do like a field fit design build type project as compared to potentially having to take a few months to put plans and specs together and then bid it and blah, 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 blah. So anyway, that's separate from this topic, but it sounds like you guys are already looking at it. Okay, approval of ordinance 4-2023 prohibiting after-hours use of agency property.
So this is the final action by the board to approve the ordinance. It was the one we brought again last month for the after-hours property use and substance signage, et cetera. It does reflect the language requested to be clear that the Legacy Trail is not affected by these hours of use. So again, final action by the board just to make the ordinance official.
I mean, the Dan Wilkins Memorial Trail. Not effective.
Hopefully it's not
effective.
The only names on that trail are the TTSA board of directors who were in place at the time.
Yeah, but you know what, Dan? I remember sitting back for 2 years listening to you every month about getting this trail approved. So to me, it's the Dan Wilkins Trail.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
You guys, I'll take it. I don't want the memorial term ever in there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So,
I had a question.
Sounds of that. Go ahead. Sorry.
That's all right. You've defined hours, April through September, when it's prohibited, and then October through March. Could we not have used sunrise to sunset or sunset to sunrise? Just because, there's a lot of time change in those periods, and I've seen that on other places. No use, after sunset or whatever. And then it would kind of automatically shift with the seasons, and you don't need these two time groupings and all that. Is that a viable option? Or
it's a great question, and that was actually the original way we had structured it.
Yeah.
But as we started to look at it, we found that this is actually going to be an enforceable ordinance by criminal enforcement. And criminal enforcement requires a higher level of specificity if we're going to ask the police to actually come out and kick folks off the property and potentially prosecute under it. And so we determined that it would actually be necessary to have specific times involved. We wouldn't have that flexibility if we wanted to have criminal enforcement be viable.
Really, we all know it's on your watch, it's on your phone, exactly what time the sun sets and sunrises every day. But that's just too ambiguous somehow.
It is.
From the law enforcement side. Okay.
Okay. Good question. Other questions or comments on this?
I got a couple of questions. Have we had any additional vandalism or graffiti on my favorite boulder out there at the entrance? And
I don't think we've had no new graffiti. We've had some illegal dumping that took place through the winter, in the random tire marks that show up on the road from people, doing donuts at some point in the night.
Exhibition of speed.
Yeah. We have definitely, this year, we've definitely seen an increase in people who are trying to camp on the property. And we've had to ask them to move on. I'd say a marked increase this last summer.
So when you say ask them to move on, do we have an employee that after sunset does a walk or does a patrol of our property, especially along the river, to pick up any illegal camping? How do we police that? Is it just if somebody pulls in there off the road after sunset and pulls over to the river to maybe get an early start on fishing or whatever, do we have personnel that will sit back and drive along our property, and how do we know that we have illegal camping going on unless we see a smoke from a campfire?
To answer the first question, no, we don't ask staff to go patrol the area looking for them. In general, it's what we're seeing is they're up on the top, either back behind the bus barn over by TDPUD's well or out along that area. So we can actually see them as we're driving in. Usually between Michael, Paul, and myself, we spot them. Most of the staff is really alert about it. So we've had operators who are coming in for shift or whatever. They've spotted them, and then they'll go out and ask them to, hey, you can't be camping here. The good thing is we haven't seen any campfires or smoke from campfires. We're getting them before they're doing any of that. But I'm hesitant to have staff, go on patrol. That's really why we want the ordinance, and then that way, if they do see anything, they can just call Truckee PD and ask them to come and ask them to move based on the authority of the ordinance and all the signage that we're going to put up.
Very good. No further questions.
Okay.
So the signage, have we figured out where the signs are going to go, the numbers?
That's the next item on the agenda.
Okay.
It's a little bit of a presentation on what the signs are going to look like and a rough numbering and location for the sign grid.
Okay. Further questions or comments?
No, well done.
I move to approve ordinance number 4-2023.
Motion by Director Cox to approve ordinance 4-2023, second by Director Trezin.
Sure.
No public comment on this item. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Next, item 10 on our agenda, B10, is consideration of approving resolution declaring real property subject to pending 2019 land exchange with Truckee Tahoe Airport District to be surplus exempt land.
So as we proceeded into doing all the final process of the land exchange, legal made us aware that due to the dates, it doesn't fall under it didn't fall under an exemption, that we have to make an exemption, I guess to say. So Andrew drafted the exemption. The airport board has already taken action on this from their end and done the exemption on their end. So it's a bit of a housekeeping for us to deem it as exempt from the surplus land so that we can proceed with the exchange. And I think I summarized it okay.
Yep. So it's a mouthful of a resolution. So Andrew, you helped draft this. Okay,
I did.
Great.
Right.
Okay, so to be clear on this is the final discussion and final resolution to be brought before this board for the approval of the land exchange with the airport.
I'm not quite comfortable saying it's going to be the last one that comes, just as we work through the details of the exchange and the final actual property boundaries that end up being exchanged. There may be some adjustments that take place as we survey and stuff. So we may be back for an amendment to say, it's 10 feet more this way than it was that way. But that's the only thing we anticipate. We're going to probably have to do lease modifications with TDPUD as well as the school district because of their lands, the effect on their lands with the exchange. So we'll be bringing that back to the board too for those lease agreements to be modified.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions or comments? So this is one more step in the direction of finalizing the land exchange, and there may be one or two more that cross our desks.
That's correct.
Cross our, whatever this is here, tables in the future. Okay.
Yes.
Any speculation as to what the time frame looks like?
Right now, we're working on securing survey to get all of the parcels with property corners, so we know exactly what the effect is. We don't have any. Defer to Aaron for any. Correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron. As far as looking for the actual property corners, we don't have any record of those, so we're getting those surveyed in conjunction with the airport. So that's the next step, trying to get that done before winter, and then figure out what the effect is. So it's moving, but moving a little slower than probably what we hoped.
Okay. With that, would anyone care to make a motion to approve Resolution 15-2023?
I so move.
Motion by Director Wilson, second by Director Smeltzer. No public comment on this item. Those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Okay. V11, discussion and approval to receive and file recommended changes to the annual financial audit for fiscal year 21-22. Crystal.
Good morning. So we presented the audit, the fiscal 22 final audit in April. Mr. Jonathan Foster from the Davis Farr CPA firm presented it in April with no findings, and it was accepted. It was later identified that the independent auditor's report had the incorrect year. It had 2022 and it should have had 2023. That is on page 3 of the original. So you have your original set of financials in the front, and then behind that will be the updated set of financials. And so that is the one change that's going to be on page 3. I think it's 5 of the PDF, where it says April 12, 2022, and on the updated version it will have April 12, 2023. So it had an incorrect year. And then the second change, when we reached out to the auditors to update the letter, they realized that they had a bad grouping of the interest expense and investment income loss. And so just a little bit of background, we have to record the fair market value adjustment for LEAF, or for all investments. We'll see more of that this year with the 24 with the investments that we have. And they grouped it with interest expense instead of investment income loss. And if you look on page 13 in the first set, you'll see that under the non-operating revenues and expenses, the investment income for 22 was 155 and the interest expense was 642,097, and that included an adjustment of 502,334 for a loss, fair market value loss on LEAF. If you look at the updated financials, same page, you'll see that's the original right there. And if you go down to it's going to be under the basic financials.
So it sounds like these modifications were reviewed by the Finance Committee.
Yeah.
I think we did. I had to leave early
Yeah.
before you discussed that.
We
Unfortunately,
did do that. Mr. Foster, with Kim, he was online and he explained that. And so what they had done is they had incorrectly grouped that fair market value adjustment in interest expense instead of investment income lost. So there's no net change to total. There's no change to total non-operating revenues. It's just a regrouping to investment income loss where it should be.
these are kind of accounting numbers. They're not cash. They're just
That's the accrual. So we're required on accrual-based accounting to record fair market value on any investments that we have at year end.
Right,
And
so-
they've had an investment loss of
So-
$502,000.
Right, so this is basically a cleanup subsequent to our acceptance of the
Yes.
annual financial audit for 21-22 on some items that were identified subsequent to our acceptance of that report that the auditors and you, Crystal, thought were of enough significance that we as the board should see it, approve it. So I think this information was all included in our staff package. Sounds like at least Scott was able to review it at the Finance Committee meeting.
And I did also discuss it with Andrew. When it was just a date change, we were just going to change the date, but because we're fixing the regrouping, even though there's no impact, financial impact, we wanted to bring it to you guys for transparency and to get it corrected.
So will we have a revised audit put on our website, and there'll be a revised date or something like that, or we just substitute?
Once we found out that there was an incorrect date, we removed it from the website.
Okay.
And as soon as you guys accept it today, we'll get it reposted to the website.
Do we have to don't we have to send the audit to the controller's office or something as well? Do you have to
We'll
resend it
resend
to them?
everything out to, we have a list of folks that we send our audit to, and we will resend it out to them as well.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, would anyone like to make a motion to approve basically the updates to the 21-22 audit?
I move to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Director Wilson, second by Director Trezin. No public comment on this item. Those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. None opposed? Okay, thank you. Next is approval of the 2023 roof repair project change order 1. Aaron.
Good morning, President Wilkins, Board of Directors. The agency is currently in contract with Cinemark to replace the roofs over the Building 2 lower and upper AWT. This work is being performed under the 2023 roof repair project. Prior to 2023 roof repair project being developed, advertised, and bid, roofs of Building 23, a section of Corridor 6C, and Building 24 appear to be in acceptable condition. However, over the course of this past winter, the roofs had monolithically failed. With these roofs over sensitive areas, contract modification number 1 was prepared. If approved, authorizing the contractor to replace those roofs under the current roofing project. The contractor submitted a proposal to replace the roofs that have monolithically failed at a total cost of $219,000, and that's shown incorrectly. I do apologize. $219,554. Translating into an average cost of $52 per square foot. I just want to note that the contractor for a similar roof size and height was approximately $11 lower than the $52 that he bid. We did look at patch repairs. We come in at an overall lesser cost, but the agency has not had good long-term success with this approach. Sometimes patches fail, and the entire roof needs to be subsequently replaced at a later date. The proposed roof, if replaced, would come with a 20-year warranty. Alternative option is to delay the work to a future date under competitive bidding process. We did consider this, however, this approach would come with some risk in that Building 23 is section of Corridor 6C, and Building 24 house sensitive infrastructure such as drives, PLCs, and control panels. Roof failures next winter in any of these roofs could be catastrophic if moisture is introduced into these sensitive areas. The engineer's estimate and budgeted amount for this project is $1.2 million. The current contract amount is $733,000. The proposed change order amount is $219,545, making if the board approves, making the total contract amount $952,948.20. Staff recommend the board approve contract modification number 1 for the 2023 roof repair project.
Okay, so we've got an existing roofing contractor that's working for us on some buildings that we asked him to replace the roof on. We've got another, is it one building or two?
You could say 2 buildings in a corridor.
What's that?
2 buildings in a corridor.
So we've got 2 additional buildings and a corridor that could use a re-roof now as well, and we could have our current contractor go do it, or we could not do this and do it a year from now after going through another bid process.
And these areas that were identified were part of the next phase of roofing.
Right.
I know that was asked at a previous board meeting. And I think this kind of wraps up all of the areas that are actually in need of re-roofing in over the next few years.
So this gets the work wrapped up now and allows us to move on to other projects.
And one of the risks is it's a smaller area, so if we competitively bid the smaller area, we're probably not going to get the same dollar per square foot.
Yeah.
Just for the mobile.
The crew is currently here.
Current crew is currently completed the roof, but they are aware that the board may approve this change order and are prepared to come back and finish the work.
Okay, because I see we're to be completed by October 20th, so they feel comfortable with 1 month.
Yeah.
Okay.
Makes sense to me.
And just a point of law or public contracting code, I mean, are you allowed to do change orders, to add work to projects? Is there a limit to how much you can do that?
There is. There's no dollar limit, but there are some sideboards on whether the change is so significant. We call it a cardinal change. This would not be because it's in the same line, and there's real public policy reasons behind getting the work done, as Aaron was explaining. So I'm comfortable with the change order process.
Okay. And no concern. I know that our original plan set, you guys do some pretty detailed, plans for them to work on it. In this case, they don't have those plans, but it's probably using the same details. There's no concern about the scope of work that they're actually buying into.
Yeah, there's no concern.
Okay.
Is this contractor ready to get this modification done?
Yes.
Yeah, I see.
I'd like to make a motion to get her done.
Motion by Director Cox to approve the 2023 roof repair contract change order number 1 with Centimark Corporation. That's what
Well said.
Yeah. I'll second.
Motion by Director Cox, second by our good friend Dave down at the end of the table. Is there any further discussion?
Is there any contingency in that?
So the engineer's estimate and the amount that was budgeted.
They've given us a quote now for the 220 something, and they find something else a little wrong, and now I just want to make sure that you're not back here or get held up. Typically, we've been adding like a 10% or depending on the type of project, and whether we want to add a little not to exceed amount on that change order, just to make sure. Or we had one probably on the original contract.
We did, no.
I don't know if we've had to use any of that.
So we haven't used any of that.
Okay.
It's $70,000.
So that contingency remains available.
Okay, good.
Okay, so motion by Director Cox, second by Director Smeltzer. No public comment. Any further questions? Those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. Okay, item D13, approval to award procurement of 3 chemical storage tanks.
Board of Directors, President Wilkins. The 2022 sodium hydrochloride disinfection full-scale project requires the purchase of 3 tanks to store disinfectant that will be used to treat plant effluent. The Purchase of these tanks will allow enough disinfectant to be stored on-site to meet the various seasonal flows to the plant. The tanks are being acquired with the primary purpose of storing chemicals that will be used to disinfect plant effluent. Staff have determined that the combined storage of the tank is sufficient to accommodate the seasonal variations of flows to the plant. The use of fiberglass tanks was evaluated. However, the additional costs do not provide any major advantages relative to the use of high-density cross-linked polyethylene tanks for this project. Misco Water was the only supplier to submit a bid in the amount of $205,915. I do want to note that investigation of the bid determined that the supplier did not account for taxes in the bid. Hence, the actual bid price should be $220,902.99. If awarded, staff will issue a change order in the amount of $16,987.99, thus revising the bid amount up. To keep the overall project costs down, staff will place the tanks on a pad constructed by a contractor and perform the remaining work needed to put the tanks in service. If awarded, it is estimated that tanks will be delivered to the agency in February 2024. Fiscal impacts, the engineer's estimate for the tanks was approximately $200,000. The actual contract amount is $220,902.99 if the board does approve the issuance of the change order for the taxes. The estimated project total is approximately $500,000. Recommendation is that staff recommend the board award the contract to Misco Water for providing and delivering 3 tanks to the wastewater treatment plant.
Thanks, Aaron. Any questions or comments from the board?
I was wondering about the tanks that are going to be sitting in the open, about snow loading, and what about delivering them in February? Is that going to be an issue?
So we've recently conducted a project, the chlorine scrubber. So staff does have familiarity with taking, or I should say, doing winter work and having a crane on site. So
that's what it is.
We're prepared to handle that.
What about those tanks and the snow loading on the tanks?
So we checked the snow loading on the tanks. The tanks are, will be able to handle additional weight for the snow.
Okay.
The tanks are heated as well. They have tank heaters on them, so right, it's going to be. It'll have to be kind of one of the worst storms to exceed that heated product melt off, if you will.
Okay.
Blake?
Didn't consider it.
When we took our tour, there's a whole that really tall building over there that basically is not the old, I think it was AWT system that seemed to have some very large tanks in there. Did staff explore the opportunity of taking advantage of existing tankage and indoor facilities for this process?
We did look at that.
Okay.
Uniform Fire Code treats sodium hypochlorite as a hazardous material. And then Andrew to kind of help me walk through this a little bit. Our understanding was that we're not necessarily subject to the Uniform Fire Code, but yet it's good practice to follow the Uniform Fire Code. Did I get that correct?
Yes. It largely depends on what facility we're doing, but for this one, because it's intimately connected to the wastewater facility, the government code provides that you're not subject to the local codes, including fire code.
But it's a good idea to follow the fire code. And so we did look at putting the tanks in there.
So are you
or
saying
even using existing tankage?
Right. Are you saying the fire code suggests that these type of tanks should not be in an enclosed
That's
building?
hazardous.
Is that what?
Well, we could, but there's
Needs to
the
be a
project's
bigger
costs escalate because we'd have to do a lot of reworking, addition of fire sprinklers, ventilation, demolition. It just ended up being more cost effective to have the tanks outside.
I'm anticipating a question. Reusing the existing tankage.
Yeah, we have.
We did evaluate that. It's probably not the most feasible approach because of the sodium hypochlorite is pretty aggressive as far as eating the liners. Those are all FRP tanks that are in there that had caustic in them. We already deal with issues of it seeping from the manways and stuff like that. It would probably have been, to reuse those existing tanks would have been a short-term approach, and they didn't have enough capacity to ride out, to make sure we always have enough product depending on whether we're impacted by forest fire, weather, where we can't get a delivery.
Thank you.
Good job. Other questions or comments? Would anyone care to make a motion?
I'll move.
A motion by Director Trezin to approve the procurement of 3 chemical storage tanks from the recommended vendor.
Second?
Second by Director Cox. No public comment. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Item 14, discussion and review of the 2024 parking and landscape improvement project.
Go to the, this is more of an update. What staff have found is that we basically want to expand the parking lot and make snow removal easier. The existing curb that frames the existing parking lot definitely needs to be replaced. And so part of that is that if we need to replace it, we started looking at, well, what can we do to expand parking? Right now we have approximately 20 parking spaces, 21 parking spaces. With this arrangement, we'll have approximately 44 parking spaces and an additional handicap space, making it total to 2. What we're looking, or staff should say, the board's not being asked to take action at this time. This serves just to keep the board informed of the progress and decisions that are being made concerning this design.
Okay. So we actually had a presentation on this at our last board meeting, that at the time the thinking was that would be the last time we as a board would see it, but then you thought about it some more and have come to the conclusion that adding more parking than was shown the last time would be good.
Correct. Based on the feedback we got at the last board meeting, we reworked it, got more spots, so wanted to bring it back kind of this next final. One more final.
Got it. Final. Right.
Conceptual of the additional parking spots and the shift from a rounded appearance to square, and then we'll incorporate the other comments by Director Cox as far as enlarging the artificial turf areas, which is kind of reflected here, but we just want to kind of get a final buy-off on more of the parking approach and the additional spots.
Fine to me.
Looks good.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Nice change.
I would strongly recommend, and I wouldn't even, unless you need it for drainage, I wouldn't put any curb on it. That'll make your snow removal folks that much happier.
Yeah.
Great.
We're going to at least do a rolled curb this time instead of a
Vertical. Or AC dike or whatever.
Make it a little easier.
Yeah.
And our snow removal staff had an opportunity, been coordinating with engineering. They solicited feedback from our snow removal staff, and everybody's pretty much in agreement that this is the best approach at this point.
Yeah.
So we've got some excellent feedback from staff.
Good. Okay. Let's take a 4-minute break. No trespassing and no parking signage project.
Yes.
So Aaron's got some presentations to go over at the last meeting. There's a request to see a kind of a sample of the signage. So between Aaron and Paul, they worked together to get some samples and kind of an overlay map of where all these things are going to go. So with that, I'll turn it over to Aaron.
President Wilkin, Board of Directors. Following a recent security breach where an individual trespassed onto agency property and caused a subsequent fire burning approximately 10 acres, TTSA identified the need to bolster security measures. Staff identified posting no trespassing and no parking signs as a method to accomplish this. Signs will be strategically placed at all roads and trails that lead into the property owned by TTSA and on the fence line of the wastewater treatment plant and retention ponds. The agency is proposing using a total of 3 different signs. As shown in the attached drawings, the placement and design of the signs have factored in all applicable legal stipulations and local ordinances. So you can see here example of some of the signs. The engineer's estimate to accomplish this is approximately $20,000. The board is not being asked to take action at this time. This update serves to keep the board informed on the progress and decisions that have been made concerning this work.
All right, thanks, Aaron. Sorry for sneaking over behind you. Any questions or comments from the board?
The hours will be adjusted to be consistent with the resolution. It says 6 to 6 on the sign.
Yeah, we'll update that. It was just right now on the sign. It was just a more kind of a figure. We still have to track down the towing company, so we're still in the process of working out the finer details.
Right. So in terms of the placement, if you pick, that's how you can take an initial cut at it, but strategic locations along the access road, the Georgia Drive, Butterfield Drive, the road that's opposite from Butterfield Drive, maybe it is Butterfield Drive still on the other side of Georgia.
Yeah.
And then is there any, and then is that showing that there would be signs along the Legacy Trail as well?
So we can go to the, not along, yes, along
In
the
the
Legacy Trail.
So if someone were to try to like wander off the Legacy Trail at a spot where maybe because there's like some old grades out there and some walking paths that kind of intersect with the Legacy Trail that are not formal, but
So here what we have here is a picture of the Legacy Trail.
yeah.
So this is the Legacy Trail right here, and this is a path that leads to the plant.
Right. So you put them in those kind of locations.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes
So
sense.
our intent is not to make people think that, hey, we're trespassing on the Legacy Trail, but if they try to take this.
Yeah, no, but I think it's smart, those locations where some of these older grades or walking paths lead from the trail out onto our property, to put those signs at those locations makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
And it looks like you guys, the plan calls for some grading out some actual parking to concentrate day use in certain areas and then kind of get rid of just as many incidental new trails and stuff.
Yeah, it's some of the random parking that we deal with, and working with Paul and Aaron. The main area is we have this infamous climbing boulder, so we get people that are parking right out here at the corner. Causes issues as far as it just narrows the road, plus they're starting to roll the asphalt. So we figured we might as well just kind of grade off an area, gravel it, boulder it, and kind of try and direct them where we want them to park, and then put signage up on it. So the intent was once we do that, we would do some brochures so that we could ignore the no parking sign before we towed them off. We put some brochures on their car saying, hey, look, we've designated a parking spot over here with a little map. Please don't park here, otherwise your car's subject to get towed at your expense and all that good stuff.
Looks like the other popular area that I'm aware of is when we take a left on Butterfield to the right, there's kind of that spur road that used to go up to the dam.
Very popular over there. So we're going to gravel the sides to try and protect the asphalt some. They generally don't cause us any issues over there. That's a good place for them to park. So try and concentrate them where we want them to park.
Okay. Other thoughts or comments on this for staff?
No, hooray.
Great. And then I'm assuming this is probably not something that would come back to the board and get the signs made and place them.
Yeah, at this point, and unless there was some feedback that changed something that you'd want to see again, we would proceed with the layouts. Wording might change a little bit based on the ordinance or any direction from legal. We would just proceed and start getting them purchased and installed.
Yep. Great. All right. There's no further discussion on that. Next is approval of the annual employee appreciation luncheon.
One second. he's running really slow today. So we discussed with staff, traditionally we do Christmas or holiday dinner that rotates between Reno and the Truckee area. In discussion with staff, last year was a pretty heavy winter, which made it a little bit more difficult for people to attend. We talked with staff. I know I got some feedback from Blake that they do a luncheon during work hours, and it seemed to be a well-received thing. So we rolled that out to staff. Staff jumped on it. They really liked the idea of doing a luncheon during work time. That way more people could participate. And then, of course, I sweeten the deal a little bit with some admin leave after the party to go ahead and leave early for that day. The overall vote was, yeah, let's proceed this direction. Just looking
Just want to make sure we're good with it.
Yeah, and the approval of the expenses to make it all happen.
Okay. So, any thoughts, comments? Everyone okay with it?
Move to approve.
Motion by Director Cox to approve, second by Director Wilson.
Yes.
No public comment. Those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Did you guys set a date?
Yes. We did. That's actually on the board calendar, our next item.
Okay, great.
For December 13th, which is the reason we want to discuss that also.
Okay.
I think Richard has already talked to you a little bit about that, about having a December meeting.
Yeah, I reached out mainly as it related to the 13th and then the December board meeting. Reached out to each of the board directors. Feedback I got from everybody was the December board meeting was fine. So, but Rochelle still wanted to kind of talk about the calendar through December, January, and into February, just to see if there's any changes we need to make, moving, canceling, or anything like that. So it's just a discussion item. See if we're good with the calendar as it sits.
So the November 15th board meeting, I will not be able to attend that. I've got a conflict with it. I'm not.
No Zoom?
Yeah, no. So I'm okay with just not being there. I think it's more trouble to try to move a meeting to accommodate one director's inability to attend than it is than it's worth, I think. I'm not sure if there's any major items you're looking at on November 15th.
None are coming to mind.
I'll be Zooming.
You'll be remote.
In November? Okay.
And I'll have to Zoom the January 2nd.
January is Zoom for...
The board meeting, I'll be here for the January 9th.
Because to participate remotely, you've got to have a address you can post, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to have one for the 15th, so.
I would say that the board meeting on the 20th, we should plan on it, but if there's really a very light calendar, we consider canceling it. But
Right.
keep it on there for now.
With the party, I mean, not that it matters, what my schedule is, but having a party the week before and, putting the board packets together just makes it difficult. And I don't know if there's something else that week also, if I'm not mistaken, but
So you're saying combine the party and the board meeting?
with the finance committee and a party
Require
and a
all
board
employees to
packet.
attend the board
It's
meeting
just
prior to the party.
So Rochelle is lobbying you to cancel the 20th meeting, I think.
Right.
Is what I'm hearing.
And I would say that, I think we can do that as we get a little closer. I just don't want to cancel it now in case we have some action we have to take.
If there's something we
If
can
there
do
is something, we
November.
keep it a very tight board meeting that doesn't tax,
That's not 17 items.
Exactly.
398 pages.
Right.
Aaron, when do you think Scott's going to be ready to bring for approval for the concrete slab?
That'll be ready in October.
Okay.
And so I guess with Director Cox participating remotely, me not participating on the 15th, that'll make it necessary for the other 3 board members to be able to be here in person, otherwise you wouldn't be able to do the meeting, right? Correct. You have to have at least 3 of the board members in the room.
That's
Actually, that would be the case under the old rules, the AB 361 emergency rules, but now you just need 3 directors who are within the jurisdiction of the agency. So technically, you could have some folks zooming in from nearby or from their home districts. Maybe a distinction with that.
Have to be within the TTSA boundaries. So
I think Dale's zooming from Florida.
Yeah, he's out for that.
I'll be not around, so the other 3 board members would be critical for them to be able to attend. Okay. Anything else on this?
No. Good. Thanks for looking ahead.
All right. Management team reports, department reports. Who would like to go first? Michael.
Good morning, Board of Directors. Dan, congratulations to everybody who's moving up. For the operations department report, for compliance, all for the plant waste discharge requirements were met for the month. Monitoring and reporting program, one of the 2 weekly influent total nitrogen tests was sampled 1 day late due to a lab error. For the plant itself, performed well through the month. We're still continuing to evaluate the sodium hypochlorite project, pilot project. Going good so far. With one little hiccup that we had to address with delivery. We cleaned and inspected the filter backwash tank. Laboratory staff performed the necessary testing. Proposed corrective actions were accepted regarding the May laboratory assessment with an expected completion date of September 27th. Last month we had 24 pending. We have now 6 completed for the corrective actions and 18 pending. But again, that is anticipated to be done and accepted by September 27th. One other thing I would like to talk about was we had a request from one of the board of directors to look into and have a discussion about the updating the request for the wastewater testing for the COVID. We looked back in our records and we were contacted back in October of 2022 by the CDPH. And we responded back to them and they never responded back to us. So we were kind of waiting for a response back from them. We had a few questions about sampling and how that was all going to work, and they never responded back. So we will, today we have a Zoom meeting that one of our staff are going to be attending to get more information from CDPH and the Nevada County Department of Health, which kind of coordinated together to do the COVID testing and the wastewater. And hopefully we'll have some more information next month. But other than that, we're just kind of waiting for feedback from them. Is there any other direction for that from the board?
So if I recall that, Michael, I think that we as a board were curious as to whether there was any role for us to play in COVID monitoring, recognizing that we're not a public health entity. It was more that we wanted to be cooperative, I think, towards public health entities that might be interested in that information, if I remember the conversation correctly. So it sounds like there was some initial outreach by public health and then no follow-up because probably their focus changed or who knows what. So I don't know, from my perspective, it seems that we should continue to be available to be cooperative and to be willing to provide information to them to the extent we have it. It's kind of a question of how much more, I guess, proactive do we want to be in like seeking them out, which I don't know, I'm good with what we're up to, but
I guess I wanted to take a little bit more proactive approach in terms of reaching out and finding out information, not necessarily saying we're going to do it, but what's happening out there and the interest. I think it's valuable. I get reports from friends who work for Cobble Forest that the cases of COVID have gone way up there, and that may impact what you may do, go to the movies, what have you, and maybe you'd see that earlier if that information was coming. If we were testing here at the plant, and so I think there's, it's a brave new world. It's a new, it's some pretty interesting stuff. That's good public health opportunities, and so I appreciate you attending me when there's, webinars and touching base with folks and seeing what kind of opportunities there are out there, and then coming back. Don't commit. I would say not overly commit yourself, but just at least find out if there's interest and opportunity for us to cooperate in these types of activities.
And I will say that in the original communication with the CDPH, they did offer to send all the sampling equipment, and they would give us some spots to sample. I believe the frequency would be like 3 times a week or something along those lines, and that they would run the samples. And originally they were going to be running the samples out of South San Francisco laboratory, and then sometime in 2023 they wanted to switch over to a different lab. And I think they're still in the process, and hopefully we'll have a little more information after today. But other than our time and grabbing the samples and mailing them and stuff like that, it looked like they were going to pick up the cost of doing that testing, just for your information. So.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys continuing to look into that. And I don't know when you are involved with the CWEA, our Association of Wastewater Folks, whether there's opportunities to pull some of your peers and see what's happening at other plants, and are they going to say don't get involved? This is this has a lot more effort, or whether they say it's been great for our community. It'd be good to pull them as well. So I appreciate the cycling back, and look forward to hear what else you hear going forward.
Other than that, that's all I have for the operations report. Any questions?
And your pictures.
Oh, this was staff cleaning the backwash equalization tank, which is just right down right outside the windows here. This is where our final filtration. So when we backwash the final filters, we do some of that anthracite coal that's used for the final filtration before chlorination. And we basically take it out of this tank, and then we truck it out. So we have to keep that tank cleaned out. And this tank is designed to meter the flow back to Headworks at a kind of a restricted rate.
Okay. Paul, are you up next?
Yes. All right. Good morning, board. So for the month of August, we continued project support for, should be boiler improvements, rather than digestion improvements. We've changed the name. Sodium hypochlorite project is still ongoing. We still have the SCADA IT master plan implementation that is ongoing. We do estimate completion next month for the final report. We continue with the Lucity CMMS project, which is somewhat tied to the warehouse inventory project. That is ongoing, and then support for the landscape and roof repair projects. A couple of the notable projects for the month. We completed installation and programming of the VFD for the multi-purpose pump station. That is the second of 2. That's been a long time coming, and we finally got all the parts for that. So we also installed radar level detection on Lime Silo number 30. We are testing that currently, so that'll probably be also implemented on another silo as well if everything goes as anticipated. Responded to multiple power outages out at the TRI telemetry sites, which did require staff to install generators out there temporarily to keep those sites reporting. Upgraded lighting in BNR influent to LED. That LED project continues to go throughout the plant as budget and time allows. Completed plumbing modifications for the Hearst boiler to heat digesters 29 and 30. I'm sure you're aware of the ongoing discussions about that, so that is completed now. We attended a CPEX progressive cavity pump training as well to kind of coordinate with some of the purchases that we did in the previous month. And work orders pretty much stayed pretty flat. So for the month, moving on to pictures. That's a picture of Tobin performing some of the LED light upgrades there at our VNR little pump station. Right there, that's the DXP here doing some of the training with staff for the CPEX pumps. Some of the fuel oil system upgrades or repairs that were done. And then, once again, there's Tobin with our radar commissioning. This was an entry into the phosphorus stripper number 58, or I should say that's one of the retrievals using one of the retrieval arms there. So a couple of our staff doing that. And that's Dean. That's one of the variable frequency drives. It's a pretty high dollar unit. The one to the right was completed last year, so this is the second of two. Gives us a lot more robust system that includes some great filtration properties to filter out noise and whatnot. So that station's sitting pretty good now. And then, of course, our maintenance office remodel, which is concluded. So we are now starting to move back into this area. Welcome to come down and say hi anytime. Any questions?
Questions from the board?
I had some time ago, a while ago, Richard sent out an email showing a leak in one of the tanks, whatever became of that.
A tank leak?
Yeah,
That'd be VP CARB clarifier. It's out of service right now. Engineering is, Aaron's probably going to touch on it in his report. But engineering's working with contacting various contractors to get a path forward to do a repair on that.
And so just tanks old?
Correct.
Okay.
Old and cracked, yeah.
Maintenance did look at it to see if we could effectively repair that, and it was determined at that time, talking with engineering, it'd probably be best to have an outside contractor perform that work.
Great. Any other questions for Paul?
My question.
Okay. Eric?
The engineering department report, current projects under construction are the 2021 chlorine scrubber improvements project. We are almost at the end of this project. It's been dragging on for a little bit longer than it should. What we're waiting for is a air valve on one of the samplers. Once we have that, the project will be complete. The 2023 roof repair project, we've extended that out due to the approved change order. And the project's currently in bid phase. Actually, at the time of the writing, this was in bid phase, but we currently now started on the TRI digital scanning. These are the two TRI pipes that are coming into the plant. So we're starting at manhole 99 over by the Legacy Trail expansion project, and then coming to the plant. The next slide, project in development, the boiler replacement project. We're almost done with the scope of work. The filter influent condition assessment project. We have received all of the equipment we need to do to conduct an analysis of the filter influent pipe, the sodium 2022 sodium hypochlorite disinfection full-scale project. We should be pushing out we have pushed out the contract to purchase a pad. We just recently approved the purchase of tanks, so that project is moving forward. The TRI 2022 TRI Alpine Meadows to Olympic Valley Rehab Project. We are finishing up the scope of work. And the 2024 front parking landscape improvements study phase, we should have that completed sometime in November and push that out to bid. Depending on schedules, either late 2023 or early 2024. And this is a picture of the upper AWT roof. You can see here the contractor has removed what it was a layer of EPDM over polyurethane foam. What you're seeing here is the yellow is the polyurethane foam that's still adhered to the substrate, which is lightweight concrete. And then this is the picture of the completed roof. And with regards to the laundry cover, we have one contractor willing to come out and do the work in November. We have another contractor coming tomorrow to take a look at it. And we've also received a lot of bidders for the concrete pad for the sodium chloride tanks. We're going to start also painting those on the plant holders list, see if they're interested in the work. We'd like to get it done sooner when the temperatures are better. One contractor has said that they can do it in November, but it's not ideal temperatures for what we're doing, and it would just be a Band-Aid fix as opposed to a more permanent fix.
Okay. Any questions or comments for Aaron? Seeing none, and with these roof projects, we're calling them roof repair, but it's generally it's a re-roof, right?
Yeah.
Really what we're doing. Yeah. Okay, Crystal.
Just some highlights. We are working on internal final audit work, preparing for the final audit in October. They'll be on site October 23rd, the week of October 23rd, the auditors. We welcomed Katie we welcomed her to a new department. I lost her from one department to the other. So she's a real good fit for that position and doing really well. Currently, she is performing both positions. And I do want to take a minute to shout out to Michelle and Dawn as well, because they have been covering fully their normal positions and then also stepping up to cover for the open position that we have. In the billing and customer service area, the highlights, we are working on we continue to work on the connection fee study, and then Celeste and I have been working heavily on the potential TTSA codebook for all of our rules to replace the rules and regs book at some point in our near future. We had 27 connection fees, 7 residential additions, 1 ADU, 1 commercial, and 1 commercial inspection. I combined purchasing in with the finance because Kaylee is doing both. And then in the only additional item to bring up is that we did do a discovery call for Central Square software. It's an accounting software, and it was just a discovery call to get some information to elaborate on Central Square. It does talk very efficiently with Lucity. So we are just looking at it at this moment in time. That's it.
Okay. Thanks. Any questions or comments on Crystal's report? No? Seeing none? Okay. Richard.
All right. As mentioned, continue to work on the connection fee study between the consultant, staff, and finance committee. Work with staff with Lucity Asset Management, specifically when it comes to the CIP project. So working with engineers directly on that one to start tracking cost and labor hours to the projects. Continue to work on the land exchange with the airport district. Finalize the agreement with signatures with Carollo for the land use risk analysis. So we're going to be scheduling the kickoff meeting for that. Had an all-staff meeting to appoint the class and comp representatives, and then just give an overall agency update to staff. Finance committee had the second River Revitalization Steering Committee meeting. We hosted the area's general managers meeting here at the facility. Met with Brian Wright with Todd Donner on the well site that we leased property to them for, and then had minor assistance with the recruitments. Big one was celebrating Jay's retirement with a breakfast potluck. And then we also celebrated birthdays and just other random stuff that came up throughout the month as usual. So continue to have leadership skill building. And then, as Michael mentioned, the sodium hypochlorite process, just kind of finalizing our review of the effectiveness of it and continue moving with the permanent dosing facility. To try to get it wrapped up through this winter so we can start this summer with the legit station. So, a few photos of Jay's retirement party. He actually, believe it or not, got up and spoke to everybody, which surprised us all. But it was nice to be able to send him off into retirement.
He's got his retirement shorts on.
He was ready.
Yeah. That's great.
So, and there's one photo with Aaron holding up like it looks like a boombox picture going. So those story that Jay shared with me was doing an epic ride from here to I think like Santa Cruz or something like that, and he had taken a full-size boombox and strapped it to his bike. And after the first day of the ride, he said it had to go. It was just too heavy. So we made him a custom little boombox and loaded it up with some heavy things so he could relive that little story that he shared with us.
Yeah, that's great.
Cell phones and earphones, huh?
Any questions for me?
I'm curious, when you met with Brian regarding the well site, Brian Wright,
Yes.
the Truckee Daughter PUD, did he talk with you at all about their desire to relocate their facilities?
Yes, he did.
He did.
Yeah, they're definitely interested in relocating and consolidating their facilities. So he's keeping a close eye on the direction that we go as far as surplus and land.
Right, because he had talked to me about that with Advertise as well. Okay, good. There's no further questions for Richard. Next would be Board of Director comments. Any comments from board members for the good of the order?
I got a comment. In public comment, what Mike Smith had to say about the insurance coverage and the platinum and the gold plan and all that, it really upsets me to hear about our staff or our employees struggling with their health care in one manner or another. And when are we going to readdress our health care benefits for our employees? Now, we were talking last, we had an opening or some kind of an open enrollment in October or something like that. Is that still the case on a yearly basis? How do we address that?
May I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, annually CalPERS holds TTSA holds an open enrollment during the same time period as CalPERS. So we're beginning ours next week on Monday, and it will run for 3 weeks through mid-October, during which employees can choose to make any kind of changes in their health benefits. There are 2 plans available through CalPERS in the Truckee area, and that is CalPERS Platinum and PERS Gold. That's all that's available for health, for the health plans here in the Truckee area.
Okay, so once again, as far as for our employees, they had a choice last year to either enroll in the platinum or the gold plan, and the gold plan had HSA benefits into account. I really can't remember the nuts and bolts of what was discussed, because this health care is such a complex, moving target for me to get my arms around and be able to have a competent understanding of what we're offering. But I understand our fiscal responsibility to the taxpayer, but I don't want to hear stories like Mike Smith put out to us today. I don't want to hear those stories. I want this board to offer the highest level of insurance and health benefits we can, because we owe it to our employees, number one, Number two, I think it helps us in our recruitment process for retired employees and filling vacancies and whatever. And I want to make sure that when we discuss this again, that we offer our employees the best we can offer so that we don't have to listen to what we listened to today under public comment.
Fair enough. I think we need to recognize, though, that as it relates to participating providers, which is what that was related to, there's some of that's not in our control. Like next year, the Purvis Platinum Plan could decide that Stanford is no longer a participating provider, right? And we would have no control over that. I don't think it means that that facility is not available. I think it just means that it's available at a higher cost to the employee. So I hear what you're saying, Dale. But I think we also need to recognize that the healthcare industry is a much bigger animal that we can have. We can set policy as to what access employees have to which programs, but there could be stories like that of other people having serious health issues
On the platinum.
on the Platinum program where there may be certain coverages or certain treatments that aren't covered or whatever. I think it's unfortunately part of the nature of the industry.
So
I
once
agree.
again, my feeling is that I think that we as a board should do whatever we can to make sure that we have the best plan possible for our people.
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to be Santa Claus, and I don't want to sit back and frivolously spend taxpayer money, but we owe it to our employees. You know, we've gone 12 or 13 years without a lost time accident, which means that our employees are doing their due diligence to perform their tasks safely and responsibly. And this is a very important issue to these employees, that they get the best health care plan that they can achieve, and it's up to us to be able to provide that level of security to our employees. And so, whenever this is going to be brought before the board for further discussion, I want everybody to keep it in mind that we owe our employees, because they are our greatest asset, and we should treat them as such.
Okay. And this next time healthcare, I think, would come up would be potentially next year.
Yeah. So the direction this year was to status quo, get through the class and comp, and then revisit. And I think staff has an interest in discussing, benefits as a whole in the future after we have the results from the class and comp. And I think that was Mike's point today. And yes, he asked me if he could share my personal story. I said sure, which he did in detail. I see.
I had a question about that. It occurred to me, a rare form of cancer, and you got it, and Mike got it. What's going on? Is that anything to do with us? Here?
Feedback I got from, I don't mind sharing, so feedback I got was they really don't know what causes it. They know there's a gene issue as well as an environmental, but the research on it, because it's one in about 100,000, not a lot of research on what the two connections are. When I mentioned it to my doctors and Mike mentioned it to his, they were dumbfounded that two people in the same organization, close proximity to the same age and everything, have it. They were pretty amazed.
Right.
We should have played the lotto.
Yeah. And much different tenures here in terms of.
Yeah, Mike's been here a few more years. And then as far as previous backgrounds, Mike doesn't have as much background in wastewater as I do, so kind of you can't make necessarily correlation between wastewater per se.
Right.
And they say it's a really slow growing, so.
Blake?
I mean, I don't want to, hopefully we're not treading anywhere that we shouldn't. So we decided to continue to provide platinum, which is the top plan, and we'll pay all the way up to that. And then next year we see what the prices are, and through the comp study. I mean, staff may say we'd rather get another $1,000 a month in salary and get the gold plan. And so your statement that we're going to provide the highest level plan may run contrary to what staff wants when we do this class and comp study. And so, I mean, it's going to be an interesting discussion with regards to, Mike's statement and the provider network as we kind of share the information on platinum and share the information on gold and these HSA benefits if you decide to go to the gold. When we did this research a couple of years ago, the provider network was, at least in this area, was identical. There was no downside. It was only, I think, on this kind of, and that's only recent now that Stanford has pulled out. I don't know that we've done some outreach to staff I'm just concerned that, Mike is totally correct in what he said, but that it could, potentially cause a lot of people to sign up for platinum when it really isn't going to provide them any additional benefit, and they're going to actually lose benefits through the HSA or HRAs that we provide on the other side. Have we continue to look at provider networks so that they know that they're going to not be stuck with that? What they get when they sign up for gold versus platinum? Has there been some outreach to staff on?
It's a good point, Blake.
Yeah, there hasn't been to date. Mike just got that communication, I think, at the beginning of the week or over the weekend. So that's pretty fresh news. And oddly enough, in that letter, it's pointing people to UCSF, and then we had another staff person come in from that utilizes UCSF, and right now they're no longer taking Anthem because they're in a contract dispute. So it's
Anthem Gold or Platinum.
Right.
Okay.
So it seems like there's always this ever changing network that tends to happen. So I think it's hard to nail it down and say this is it, and it's always going to be that. Because in the middle of the year, if they're due to negotiate a contract, it could change.
Yeah,
and I think that's to your point, Dan, is that there's only certain things are within anyone's control, and those networks are not.
My general understanding of how that works is you've got, let's say, Anthem Blue Cross. They're out negotiating contracts with different service providers to basically pay for services at a discounted rate from what their retail rate would be. They might enter into a 4-year contract with one entity, then that entity it's like, contract's done, we're not willing to provide you that same level of discount anymore. And then Blue Cross can say, okay, well, we're done with you, or they could say, well, we'll pay you more. And so there's all that backside negotiation that's happening that we have nothing to do with, and we never will. And with the current structure of how healthcare happens in the U.S., I think it's just part of the reality we're going to continue to deal with.
Yeah.
So
I think in healthcare, you try to provide the best choices. An example would be a 25-year-old male who's perfectly healthy, doesn't foresee anything going wrong. Well, over the course of the year, he might get married and his girlfriend's pregnant. So he's going to opt for something different. So I think you have to provide the best choices that are there. And Dan, you hit it right on. In healthcare, I mean, the negotiation and the contracts are ever moving. And all we can do is at that point in time provide what is the best options under those circumstances for the people. Every year it changes, and sometimes really dramatically.
Okay. If gold was provided, like they do in my district, in open enrollment, someone can still, you're not prohibited from, in open enrollment, to going to the platinum. You're just responsible for that incremental cost. So if you have, medical issues that warrant it, you can still do it. You're not prohibited from enrolling in that additional program. It remains an option. There is an out-of-pocket expense. Okay, other board of director comments? Okay, seeing none, I think that's a wrap.
I have one. And I keep looking at the dates that are projects. There's still a lot of 22s, and it seems like, how do we move that bar to where more are getting finished? And this is probably a question for you, Richard. I'm the newest one here, so I don't know what the pace is. But upon a quick glance, it seems like there's still a lot of stuff from years past that we haven't accomplished. And I get COVID and I get supply chain and all that.
Some of it is due to those issues. The other one kind of goes to what I was talking about as far as restructuring a little bit, to where we can take some parallel paths on projects. It's, I want to be cautious that it's not a negative on the engineering department, Aaron and his staff. It's just that as Aaron's the only senior, as things have to funnel through the senior before they go out, that's kind of a bottleneck. So hence let's widen that out a little bit and get 2 seniors so we can parallel track projects. We're actually going to meet next week with staff, internal staff managers and engineering to review those project lists, prioritize them, get a realistic approach to what needs to be done and what we can do in-house. The next approach would be that we end up leveraging consultants to take on the projects, and we become more of a project manager as opposed to a designer. So those are the things we're looking at.
And I guess also in my mind, it's like the last 3 years, inflation has just beat the devil out of us, right? I don't know that that's going to change in the next year or two. And so those projects are only going to get more expensive. So I think it's incumbent on us to set a pace.
Yeah, Richard is part of it also. We define a 2022 project in that budget year, but then we need to do the design. There's a lead time before, and so you end up constructing the project in 2024 because it was all that, but it's still called, because it was initially called out as 2022.
Yeah. That's very good point. Just because you give it a year, that's the year it kind of came up in the budget cycle, doesn't mean that's going to get constructed. Especially with your projects, you have pre-design, you have design, then there's the bid, then there's the construction, and the construction can go for a while also. So there's, and then with seasonal constraints,
that's getting stuff done is obviously important.
Thank you. Figuring out all the little nuances and how to best leverage them to do that, and we're starting to do that. So with the intent of getting more done, and then it, obviously, as you know, being on the finance committee, it lines up with all the financing that we need to do, and the chasing after SRF loans or with getting those projects to a point where we can apply for those.
Thank you.
Okay. If there's no further board of director comments, we will move to closed session. We have 2 items. One for employee discipline and another